So what is the best step-by-step process when creating your scope of work for a rehab or for a new build? That's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to try to lay this out as simply and clearly as I can. On our YouTube page, one of our videos that has had the absolute most feedback is our video on how to format your scope of work. And it's funny because when I look back on that video, it was something that I just threw together and people have found a lot of value from it. And I'm not surprised because your scope of work is such a vital part to the project management process. I'm going to make sure that you have a process in place so that when you create your scope of work, you're not spending hours putting it together and you're also remaining accurate at the same time. I'm going to introduce you to some tools that you've probably never seen before, and we're going to make sure that this step in your project management process is done as efficiently and accurately as possible. So I'm not going to waste any time. We're just going to jump right into it. I have a slideshow presentation for you. I know I don't have all the power to make all these high-end videos, but I can guarantee you that this presentation is loaded with very valuable and practical information that you can take into your projects. So let's get started here. I have a quick introduction for you. What's really important to remember is that your scope of work is your first step of the project management process. You can't make a budget, you can't hire contractors, you can't request bids, you can't do anything until you know what your scope of work is. And honestly, so many people have this backwards where they start with the budget or they start with hiring contractors to create the scope of work, and all of this just leads into issues. So you are responsible with first making your scope of work before you do anything else as a project manager for rehabs or for new builds. And we often call this the first domino because as a project manager, you are trying to create a domino effect where every step of the process makes every next step either easier or not necessary at all. So that's definitely where your scope of work falls into this domino effect. It's the first domino because if we do this right, everything else is going to be easier or sometimes not even necessary. Okay? Now remember, this could be the most important for all of us, is that an accurate scope of work does equal an accurate budget. Okay? That's where a lot of people think that your budget gets blown by underestimating line items, but that's not the case. It's very rarely the case. 90 to 95% of budgets that are blown are because we do not have an accurate scope of work. So it is vital to our budget, to the health of our budget, to make sure that up front we have an accurate and complete scope of work. Next, and also very important, stop taking hours on site or in the office creating your scope of work. I'm trying to give you a process and the tools to make sure that you're not spending hours on this first step. There's nothing more deflating than spending the first or spending hours on the very first step of the project management process. I've heard of people that spend hours on site with their team creating a scope of work just to go home to the office and spend more hours finalizing their scope of work. We're not going to do that. We're going to give you the tools and the process that's necessary to do this very efficiently. If anything, it should take you less than an hour total between all the steps of this process to make your scope of work. All right, so let's get in. First step is understanding your product. I know we're not even going to get into the creation of our scope of work yet, but this is vital and we can't overlook this step. You have to understand your product. If we don't do this first, then what's going to happen is our scope of work is automatically going to be inaccurate because we're going to have to create that product regardless. So we might as well understand that first, okay? We have to start with the end in mind, then work backwards. This could be a great theme for you to take throughout your project management anyway, is starting with the end in mind, then working backwards. So that's why we start with understanding our product. Now people are going to ask, how do I know what product to create? And I'm telling you right now, 90 to 100% of your answers can be found just by looking at comparable sales or comparable rentals, depending on your exit strategy. I used to think this was a much harder question to answer, but now as I've been in the teaching and the coaching of project management for a few years now, I'm telling you that 90 to 100% of your answers can be found just by looking at comparable sales or comparable rentals. Now you have to also, of course, consider your exit strategy and your budget at the same time, okay? You cannot overlook these. You have to make sure you understand the exit strategy, which should play effect into what you're looking at when you're looking at either comparable sales or comparable rentals. And we all have a budget, unfortunately, so you should be considering that. And we're going to talk about how you consider that and where that falls into this process also. Step 2, pull up your most similar scope of work template. Now, this is where people are going to look at this template and say, this is different than templates I've seen in the past. And that's a good thing, because I'm telling you right now, we use templates differently than everybody else does. Most people think of a template as a blank document that you completely fill out 100%. But we're going to start with a template of our most similar type of project, and then we're going to work from there. So we're going to work from a place where we have 50%, 60%, sometimes 70% or more of our scope of work already pre-populated. So now we only have to focus on that final 30, 40, 50%. For new construction projects, we get all the way to 90% complete, where we're just tinkering with that final 10%. You want to talk about efficiency? We're literally cutting out 50 to 90% of the process right now just by utilizing templates properly. Okay, so remember, templates are not just blank documents. They're pre-populated tools that help us increase our efficiency and our accuracy. Because isn't it a lot harder to miss something when these templates are already pre-populated? It's going to be a lot easier to make sure everything is included. Okay? Step 3, fill out as much as possible before your site visit. Now, don't mind me. I threw in a GIF here. I find it pretty cool that I can put GIFs in my presentations now. I'm not really great at putting these together. I do like Schitt's Creek, so bear with me. But it's something to kind of lighten up these presentations. Anyway, you have to fill out as much as possible before your site visit, okay? There are many things that you can answer before stepping on site. You already might know what kind of siding you want. You already might know what kind of roofing you want, what kind of cabinets, countertops, tile. If you already know these things, why not fill these out before you step on site? Because here's a great thing. Now when you do your site visit, you don't have to be worried about everything on site, and you don't have to be scrambling around the entire project looking for stuff to write down in your scope of work. You're already going to have that in your scope of work filled out before the site visit. So now when you go on the site visit, you can highlight those questions that still need to be answered and go directly to those locations. That way you're not spending hours on site. You're spending minutes on site, and you know exactly where to go and what to look for. This is such a key to saving time. I'm telling you right now, this is something that people overlook. Fill out as much as you can before you even step on site. Because our next step is stepping on site. We're going to go into the site visit with a good idea of what to look for, like I just said. And we're going to gather all of the extra information that we don't know. And we're going to answer all the questions that we have not been able to answer yet. All right? I've already said this. You're going to go directly to the areas of concern. And you're also going to know what areas or what things you need to take pictures of and what things you need to take measurements for. Okay, so use that as a guide. Use that pre-filled scope of work as a guide to make sure you're taking pictures of everything you need to take pictures of, which typically should be everything, and that you're taking measurements of everything that you need takeoffs for, right? So now you know exactly what measurements you need to do. Again, now our site visit is a lot more efficient, a lot quicker. All right, step 5. You're going to create a preliminary scope of work. And I'll tell you why it's preliminary here in a second, okay? but you're going to have to fill this out with everything on the site visit that you answered. All the questions that you answered during your site visit, now you have basically 95% of the information, potentially 100% of the information to create a full scope of work. You're going to consult with your team, other contractors, suppliers to really help finalize that scope of work to where we can call it preliminary. All right. Now I have a little tip here. Use a scope of worksheet. This is an example of something that we give people in the playbook, members of the Rehabbers playbook, which I haven't really introduced that yet, but it's our coaching program. Our scope of worksheet is something that we give them to make sure that they are always considering every potential scope of work. So we have a sheet that we put together, and if you want to do this within your own business, you can do it as well, where you put a sheet together of every scope of work that you've seen in the past. That way, when you're doing projects in the future, you can consult with this scope of worksheet. You can look over this sheet to make sure that everything is accounted for and all the important detail is included in your scope of work. Okay, this is where we're really going to get accuracy. This is where we're going to make sure that everything's included in the scope of work. Therefore, everything is included in our budget and in our contractor's bids and in our schedule. Okay, this is how we can reduce overages in every other part of the process. So I have a tip here. Use a scope of worksheet. If you want it, you're going to have to be a member of the Rehabbers playbook, and you can always jump on whenever you want. Okay? So now we create a preliminary scope of work with all this information and all these tools. And the reason it's preliminary is because now we're going to have to consult with our budget. All right, now our scope of work is going to be full. We can create our budget, and then there's going to be this natural dance back and forth between our budget and our scope of work. If you're familiar with this industry and with rehabbing and building properties, you understand that not every scope of work fits in to your budget. So you're going to have to start making adjustments back and forth. So that's why in step 5, it was considered our preliminary scope of work. And it's not finalized until we do this dance back and forth with our budget. Okay? Create your budget, start making adjustments to your scope of work until you find that you're in a good place. And there's another GIF for you. I don't even know where that GIF's from. Again, I'm just trying to lighten up this presentation so it's not just my talking head and a bunch of words. Hopefully it helps. Finally, step 7, you're going to finalize your scope of work, like I said, after you consult with your budget. And then, very important step, save it as a template for future projects. So when we were talking back earlier in the process about templates, if you take a look at 3 of our example templates here, and even back earlier in this presentation, we had a template for a full gut renovation. You see that we have a cosmetic renovation template. We have a new construction template. We have a full gut with addition template. We have all these templates available within our business so that every time we come across a cosmetic renovation or a new construction project or a full gut with an addition, all we have to do is pull up these templates and again, start from a place that might be 70% of the way already complete. Now we just have to finalize that final 30%. So it's very, very important. A huge theme of what I teach as a rehabbing coach, as a building coach, is that you document everything. And if you haven't caught on to that theme yet, here it is, okay? Just like the scope of worksheet we just talked about, we documented every potential scope of work that we ever have come across, or every scope of work that we've come across in the past, so that we know every potential scope of work for projects in the future. The same is here with templates. We document every project scope of work from the past so that in the future, every time we come across it again, we can just pull this up and start from a place that's a huge head start, especially when comparing yourself to the competition where they're filling out the scope of work A to Z 100% every single time they create a scope of work. Think about how huge of head start this is in the competitive advantage that you have over everybody else in the market just by starting from this place. All right, again, you have to document everything in this business. It is too difficult a business, and I think also people don't quite understand how you can document things in this business. Well, here is a great tip for you. template every scope of work, template every budget that you've ever had in the past so that you can use it in the future. No more filling out 100% of your scope of work, 100% of your budget every single time you start a new project. You can actually systemize this business more than people think. All right? That's all I got for you. 7 steps, very simple. Hopefully this helps. The Rehabbers Playbook, like I said, this is my group where I coach this stuff, where I teach this stuff. You can find out more at therehabbersplaybook.com. And in the video description, I will post a link where you can get our scope of work template so that you're going to be able to start putting this into your business as well. So if you want to find out more about the Rehabbers Playbook, go to this website or see the video description for that. Or if you want our scope of work template, you can look in the video description and find out where you can get our template as well. All right. Hope this helps. Keep building. My name is Brandon Lindsay with the Rehabbers Playbook. I hope this helped. And please do me a favor. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you like this stuff. The more you do that is the more I can give free training. And I love giving free training because I don't like charging for stuff. I really don't. I'd rather be able to do this. So please like and subscribe and comment if you have any feedback for me so we can make more good videos for you. All right? Take care.